Hello and welcome to another episode of India and Global Left. If you are new to the show, please hit that subscribe button. Also consider becoming a YouTube member, a Patreon, or donate small amount giving in the link in the description box. Without further ado, let me welcome our guest tonight, Ambassador Chas Freeman. Ambassador Freeman is a retired US diplomat, an author, and an observer of geopolitics. Ambassador Freeman, welcome back to India and Global Left.
Thank you, Jodish. It's good to be back with you.
I wanted to focus on Iran and West Asia broadly, given war is looming on Iran and West Asia again, and no price for guessing, it's the United States again, which is moving to impose the war, given U.S. aircraft carrier groups are amassing in the region, along with hundreds of fighter jets, bombers, and refueling aircraft. What is your assessment of the situation, and how likely is the war now?
I think the war is very likely for multiple reasons. You're quite right. About half of the U.S. Air Force is now arrayed against Iran, which is an extremely large deployment. We've not seen anything like this since probably the Gulf War to liberate Kuwait. We have two aircraft carriers, one in place, one en route. The Gerald R. Ford, which was instrumental in the criminal assault on Venezuela, is now steaming toward the Eastern Mediterranean. Probably will arrive early next week, midweek, or later this week. There is a negotiation scheduled apparently for March 4th. That date may be significant because I suspect this negotiation is entirely a ruse and has no serious purpose at all. And I base that on several factors. So one is that the Iranian side says that the American negotiators, meaning Messrs. Witkoff and Kushner, two amateur diplomats who have not achieved anything so far in any context, as far as I can see, other than enriching themselves and the Trump family, both actually and potentially. The Iranian side says that they've not been asked to go to zero enrichment. That suggests to me that they're being strung along. Because the Washington agenda imposed by Israel has three elements. One is zero enrichment. Another is the curtailment, destruction, minimalization of Iran's self-defense capability through missiles. And the third is the severance of Iranian ties with movements in the region that have sought Iran's support against Israel, meaning Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, and perhaps others as well, in Iraq, for example. So I think the clock is ticking. I don't think President Trump left himself an off-ramp. He's been very definite in his threats. It's very clear from a statement attributed to him by Mr. Witkoff to the effect that he's puzzled why Iran has not capitulated, that he has absolutely no understanding of Iran at all, and is being misadvised and is probably full of misplaced overenthusiasm for warfare as a result of his successful military operation in Venezuela. But that was a very limited operation. And anything against Iran is not going to be. The Iranians have been very clear that any attack on them will result in a full-blown response by them. Why? Because the purpose of the attack is clearly to extinguish the Islamic Republic, overthrow the regime, disempower Iran, cripple it as a rival to Israel in West Asia. In other words, it's an existential threat. Existential threats cannot be met as Iran has met attacks in the past. Limited attacks have drawn limited responses, sometimes even mainly symbolic, as in the case of the attack after the murder of General Soleimani, or after the end of the June war last year, the so-called 12-day war, when Iran took out a radar station in Qatar at the Al Udeid air base, but was very careful not to kill anyone. What the response will be, according to Iranian propaganda outlets, which may or may not be accurate, is a barrage of maybe as many as 2,000 missiles aimed at Israel. And I think the Israeli military has been characteristically forthright in its warnings to Prime Minister Netanyahu that a war could be a disaster. Netanyahu is trying very hard to have the war be only between the United States and Iran, but Iran knows very well what the origins of the American policy are, and proposes to cut off the head of the snake, as the saying goes. If a huge number of aircraft are deployed in Jordan, which will not be exempted this time any more than Israel is. There may be aircraft also in the Caucasus region, in the north of Iran, in Azerbaijan and Armenia. The Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, visited the two countries separately, supposedly to celebrate the peace between them that Donald Trump claimed he had arranged, which is not in evidence, which seems to be another fictional peace rather than a real one. So what was his purpose in going there? I suspect it had something to do with the impending attack on Iran. So when Iran says this will be a regional war, I think they are being very serious in that statement. I find it impossible to believe that they could be taken in again by a negotiation scheduled to camouflage a surprise attack. I'll just make one last comment, and that is, from a military perspective, the U.S. Air Force, like other air forces, much prefers to attack at night. Ramadan is kicked off by the moon reducing itself to a mere sickle. That happened on the 17th of February, which is now, 6 days ago. So the moon is beginning to grow again, and the pressure is on the military to do something. That is also true because the U.S. can't afford a deployment of this magnitude for very long. There are 2 aircraft carriers involved. The U.S. has 11 aircraft carriers, but 8 of them are under repair, not at sea. So basically 2/3 of the Navy's most effective platform for aerial attack is deployed against Iran. How this war will go, nobody knows, but it will be a very interesting test of Chinese and Russian technology against American stealth attacks. We will see what happens. Some people believe this will be a total disaster for the United States. Others are more optimistic.
I remember reading in one of your books, I don't remember which one in particular, but you wrote that Israel had always wanted the US to do its dirty work in the region. And as you said, that one of the deterrents that Iran has, or it says it has, is to direct its missiles against Israel, and we saw that in June of last year. But given this time we are moving towards a war which is directly between the U.S. and Iran, what do you make of Israel's role, or more importantly, the deterrence strategy of Iran of attacking Iran this time, given the war is most likely directly with the United States?
Well, I think the U.S. will be attacked by Iran directly. Although the Schwerpunkt, to use the German term, for a point of concentration in military affairs is Israel, because this policy is being driven by Israel and only by Israel. Nobody else in the region wants a war with Iran. In fact, the Gulf Arabs, who were very apprehensive about Iran and who felt deeply threatened by it immediately after the Islamic Revolution, when Iran was trying to export its political philosophy to other countries, something it doesn't do anymore. They have made it very clear their territory, their bases cannot be used for an attack on Iran. Some of them, however, are in the Abraham Accords and have U.S. bases on their territory, which arguably will inevitably be involved. Bahrain, for example, which is the headquarters of the Fifth Fleet, and up, in the Persian Gulf, sort of 3/4 of the way up the Persian Gulf. The UAE, although it has been more circumspect about American basing, is also a key factor. Qatar obviously has Al Udeid, its base, which it has made available to the United States. It may be that these bases will all be subject to some sort of attack. There is also the issue of assaults by proxies, particularly in Iraq. The Iraqi Shia resistance aligned with Iran has made it very clear that they will go after the residual American presence in the country if Iran is attacked. Hezbollah and Hamas are more circumspect, I think. Hezbollah and Hamas, contrary to the American belief and the Israeli portrayal of them, are not instruments of Iranian policy. They are self-generated nationalist forces who have sought support from Iran. Same is true of the Houthis in Yemen. We don't know what they will do. But in fact, they may see this as an opportunity to reset the odds and rebalance things in their own territory. So a final point is Iran is formidably armed in several respects. For example, and it has the capability to attack an aircraft carrier at distance with hypersonic missiles that are very difficult to intercept, if you can intercept them at all, and which are apparently terminally guided, which means they can track and attack a moving object like a large ship. Iran also has a version of the Soviet, now Russian, Shark missile, Shkvar, I think it's called in Russian, which is a supercavitational, meaning it ejects air bubbles in front of it underwater and can travel at about 300 miles an hour. And that is no joke, not easily intercepted, if at all, if aimed from an Iranian submarine. One has to assume the Iranians have deployed submarines to loiter in appropriate places. So I think the outcome is uncertain, and more so because there have been widespread reports that the Chinese have offered Iran and installed a very competent radar system that can apparently detect F-35s at considerable distance, and has also deployed the Hongqi 9, HQ-9, which is a more advanced version of the Russian S-400 anti-air, anti-missile defense system. So Iran has beefed up its defenses. One assumes that it has increased production of missiles. It did not deplete its missile force in June last year. it had the capacity to continue a war of attrition. And it was Israel, not Iran, that wanted a ceasefire. Many Iranians criticized their government for agreeing to a ceasefire. I don't think the Iranians are in a mood anymore to just take attacks without serious immediate reprisal. And so we are talking about a major war here, one that can affect the entire region, which is one of the reasons that the Turks and the Gulf Arabs have been so clear about not wanting a war. So this is a big thing, and it has potential global effects as well, because the Iranians have already demonstrated their willingness to close the Strait of Hormuz. We also have coming up a joint Iranian, Chinese, Russian naval exercise, which the precise timing of which I think is coming up this week. It may be that the Gerald R. Ford won't make it to the Eastern Mediterranean until early March, around the time of the negotiations, which I doubt, as I said, are anything serious. I think they are basically conceived as spinning out time. Iran's objective in those negotiations has been to demonstrate to the satisfaction of the United States that American and Israeli intelligence agencies that say that Iran doesn't have a program to build a bomb are correct, and that therefore the basis for a compromise which would prevent Iran from building a bomb is possible. That is the Iranian objective in return for sanctions relief. But the United States is not offering sanctions relief. It is offering relief from future sanctions, additional sanctions. So there's really nothing in this for Iran that would cause it to make a really difficult compromise. And they won't do it, I'm pretty sure.
Not only is the United States not offering any concessions from sanctions, but it also seems to me that the US is not in a mood of negotiating, because Steve Witkoff had an interview to Fox News where he said that he was getting clear message from the president that there is nothing more than zero enrichment, which is of course not going to happen and not acceptable to the Iranian side. From Abbas Araghchi to others, every spokesperson from the Iranian side have made it clear every day. So what do you make of that, given they are headed they are in talks in the Geneva rounds?
I think that just buttresses my conclusion that the talks are an effort to spin out the time for the US to be ready militarily to conduct a major attack on Iran, intended to cripple it and cause regime change. I think that is the purpose. However, I have to say, there's utter policy chaos in Washington at the moment. That is the characteristic of this administration. You can see it in the reaction to the Supreme Court's ruling against the constitutionality of the tariff program that the administration put in, flailing around with new tariffs under some new authority, which is also very questionable and temporary in nature. And finally, we've developed a habit of what I call fantasy foreign policy, where we basically attribute characteristics to our opponents that they don't have. And then, as Mr. Trump has apparently said, we're puzzled when they don't surrender. But, Iran, as everyone in India has cause to remember, is a civilizational state. It's an empire. It's been around for several thousand years. And when you attack Iran, you are attacking not just a country, but a tradition, an idea, an entity that enjoys the broad loyalty of its citizens, who then rally around the flag. They don't give up. So you can, yes, of course, you can suborn Iranians, which is what was done. We have a statement from the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, that he deliberately engineered the collapse of the currency in Iran and brought the protesters into the streets. Once the protesters got into the streets, we have it from the former CIA director and others that Mossad and the CIA and MI6 then took measures to ensure that the protests did not remain peaceful but became violent. We have a propaganda campaign going on internationally, which greatly exaggerates the number of casualties in the protests. And Donald Trump used the protests, the violence against protesters, as a pretext for this entire military deployment. So it's pretty clear that there is a concerted effort by Israel, the United States, and Great Britain to overthrow the regime in Tehran, not just the government, but the regime. And it's also very clear that this is most unlikely to work. If the government is overthrown, I suspect, or the regime is actually dropped into chaos, the most likely successors are military hardliners who will build a bomb and who will double down on resistance to foreign dictates, not accept them. This is not going to be like Venezuela.
The U.S. officially talks about the nuclear program when it comes to talks with Iran. But unofficially, we know, as you said in your first answer, that it is about the nuclear program. It is about the alliances that Iran has in the region. And it is most importantly about the missile programs. You must have read about the New York Times report on that Wednesday meeting among President Trump, Secretary of State Rubio, Vice President J.D. Vance, and Dan Kane, the Chief of Staff, also John Ratcliffe, the CIA director, and there was Susie Wiles, the White House Chief of Staff. So as I read through the report, it seems to me that there was there was uncertainty about the outcome of this attack, and it seems to me that J.D. Vance was seeking more clarity, but others like Rubio and others were more confident about the outcome going their way. Does Donald Trump believe that it is still about the nuclear program, or is it very clear that it is about regime change or breaking up Iran? Is there a clarity or consensus among the ruling elite that it is not about the nuclear program, it is more about breaking up Iran, or do they still think that it is about the nuclear program?
Well, let me return to the undeniable fact that this policy is not driven by considerations in Washington, but in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. The Israelis, I think Prime Minister Netanyahu has found the nuclear issue a very convenient one for political purposes to rally foreign support behind Israel for its contest with Iran. But I don't think that's what he's really interested in. I think he's interested in eliminating Iran as a counter to Israeli hegemony in West Asia. Here we have the interesting juxtaposition of Tucker Carlson's interview with Ambassador Huckabee, who said, reflecting the drive for greater Israel among religious Zionists, that Israel had a legitimate claim to everything between the Nile and the Euphrates, which is, of course, drawn widespread condemnation from not just the countries in that region, but more broadly in the Arab and Muslim worlds. So That is the objective of Prime Minister Netanyahu. He wants to go down in history as the new Moses. Moses took the Israelites supposedly to the land of Canaan, which is now Palestine, and they conquered it. And he wants to be the man who goes down in history as conquering West Asia for the Jewish state of Israel. And so that is driving him. Donald Trump listens to what he says. Now, you said, you talked about the meeting between the various members of the cabinet about this. Clearly, there is no agreement among them. I know that I don't think any of them have any actual military experience, so except for Mr. Kane, General Kane. And I think one thing that anyone who has been involved in wars knows is that you have to have clear and feasible, attainable objectives. But this group is like the chess player who has only the opening move and hasn't thought about what to do after that. There is no plan for what happens after the attack, in part because they're uncertain what the results of the attack will be. But you should not start a war unless you know how you're going to end it, on what terms, and with whom you're going to negotiate those terms. There's no such thinking in Washington. The use of force is, in effect, an end of itself. The assumption, contrary to all the evidence, is that if you hit someone hard enough, they will fold. But we've seen many examples in West Asia, or Afro-Asia, if you will, that this is not the case. Think of Suez, which knocked Egypt for a loop. You had Jamal Abdel Nasser, the then president of Egypt, say, look, the West threw everything and Israel threw everything they had at me. I'm still here. He turned a defeat into a victory. Saddam Hussein did the same thing after the Gulf War of 1991. He said, look, they tried to get rid of me and they failed, and I'm here and I'm all powerful and you better listen to me. And besides that, you can't get any food or medicine unless you please me. I mean, we inadvertently we bolstered his power by funneling the sanctions through him. Anyway, so there's a history of defeat being turned into victory, military defeat being turned into a political victory. I don't think, and this is the final thought, Israel, has achieved some very significant short-term gains. It has crippled Hezbollah's leadership, not the movement itself, but the leadership. It has driven Hamas underground. It has not succeeded in disarming it or eliminating it. It has inflicted pain on the Houthis, who don't seem to have minded that as much as people thought they should. The Israelis actually put the American Navy up to, and allied navies, the British Navy and so on, up to trying to get rid of the Houthi blockade in the Red Sea, and we failed. So anyway, some successes for Israel militarily. Syria, big success. But all this comes at the cost of long-term Israeli survival. The world is pretty tired of everything that Israel does that violates international law, demonstrates contempt for neighbors, disinterest and dehumanization of those neighbors in pursuit of short-term advantage. And so an attack on Iran, whatever happens to Israel, and I think the devastation of Israel is a real possibility. But the Iranians have that capability, I believe, and they will not hold it back. Israel's long-term is setting itself up for defeat, whatever its military successes. So it's isolated. And you can see the international reaction, even in Europe, which has been a bastion of support for Israel, if you look at the Winter Olympics and the reaction to the Israeli presence there. So this is poorly considered, poorly calculated, if at all. And the outcome is uncertain, but it is most unlikely to be anything but a disaster for the United States and Israel, as well as for Iran, of course, because there will be devastation of Iran.
You mentioned about the joint uh, upcoming joint drills between Russia, China, and Iran. We've just had a BRICS plus, if you like, military drills where Iran participated alongside China, Russia, and a host of other countries. Notable absence was India. I doubt what was the region. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts about uh, possible role from Russia and China in the event of a war, because we've seen frustrations among circles of Palestinian activists during the genocide about the role of China. In particular, there are of course realistic limitations on part of what China can do because it doesn't want to confront the United States. But beyond radar systems to confront the stealthiness of the American weapons, and beyond the Russian defense systems, I'm thinking about S-300 and others. What bigger role can Russia and China play in the event of a war with Iran?
They don't really foresee a direct military role of any kind. Each of them is defending Iran's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and independence through the transfer of technology and know-how. In the case of the Russians, I think the know-how is very considerable because the result of the Ukraine war has been to ensure that both the Russian and Ukrainian armies are the best in Europe. I mean, there's no doubt that they are the most competent, combat experienced military forces now in the world. So the Russians have a good deal to impart, both in terms of doctrine, planning, technology. Of course, Iran has actually been a source of technology for drones that are being used by Russia. So the technology exchange is two-way. In the case of China, I think there's a more deliberate focus on defending the principles of the UN Charter and the Panchshila, the five principles of peaceful coexistence that India and China jointly declared in the middle of the last century. So the Chinese, contrary to what the usual accusations in the Western press, of all the great powers at the moment, China is the most insistent on preserving the post-World War II order in which it has prospered. It is a defender of the American-sponsored order that the Americans have now abandoned. And why does it do that? Because it has come to believe intelligently that international law, the UN Charter and international law, ultimately are the best way to protect the vulnerable, the weak, and the most appealing approach internationally. So this one result of what is going to happen with Iran, I believe, will be an increase in Chinese global prestige. That could come in two ways. One, through the performance of Chinese weapon systems, defensive weapon systems, like the radar and the HQ-9 that I mentioned, against Western technology, which will increase the appeal of Chinese weapons sales and attendant influence elsewhere. We've seen some of this already as a result of the clash between India and China. where the Chinese displays at arms
India and
expo.
Pakistan.
Sorry, India and Pakistan. You're right. Misspoke. I'm glad there wasn't anything between India and China. But we've seen an increased interest by many countries in Chinese aircraft and weapon missiles and so forth. And so far, no sales, as far as I know, but still a great deal of interest. So that's one way that this could increase Chinese prestige. The other is that China poses as the defender of the status quo, the existing order, against challenge to it from the United States and Israel, which both have acquired a reputation for being, essential outlaws internationally. So I think when you come to great power interests in this thing, India is a little bit of an outlier, I think, because of the nature of its relationship with Israel and Islamophobia in Indian society, community violence, and so forth. So I don't know where Mr. Modi stands on this, but I suspect many Indians probably are rooting for Israel rather than Iran. So I don't think India is going to do anything. So all this is rhetorical, but it's interesting. I don't see what is the probable war between Iran, Israel, and the United States as anything that is likely to involve others. I mean, but nobody, not even India, wants Iran really to be decimated or devastated, and and India has quite an investment in Iran for sound reasons. It is a strategically located country. That's why India has been investing in a port to link the north-south corridor through Iran. China has an interest in Silk Road transit of Iran. Iran sits at the control point for the world's oil supplies. Iran's airspace is an essential way of crossing from Asia to Europe or Africa. And so Iran is a very strategically located country, and people don't want it to be subject to great power or domination. So our final consideration here is, I think that I spoke of the Houthis, Hamas, and Hezbollah. Two of those, Hezbollah and the Houthis, have a theological sympathy and ideological sympathy with Iranian Shiism, although they have different, their own schools of Islam are different. And I think there's a possibility that with the Ayatollah Sistani in Iraq saying that if Iran is attacked, he will issue a fatwa for global jihad against Israel and the United States, I think there's a chance that this could happen. And it would be enormously disruptive because there are Shia everywhere. Hamas is Sunni, and it doesn't need any encouragement to oppose Israel. But I think, one of the possible results of this war could be a return to sort of 1960s style global terrorism, in which attacks are mounted on behalf of various causes, well outside the region where the controversies are located. This could even affect the Kashmir issue. So I think there are many implications to this, and there is no real evidence that anybody in Washington in a position of authority has thought this through.
Just to add a piece of information, there was a Sea Voters poll after the Iran-Israel conflict, and it reported that 28% of the sample space, which was small anyway, said that they preferred Israel over Iran, but 20% said that they preferred Iran over Israel, and most importantly, 50% said that they preferred peace and no conflict between the two nations. And just to add that, C voters is generally believed to be pro BJP, and we all know that among BJP voters, it's generally pro Israel because of their anti-Muslim and Islamophobic ideology. So it's the sentiment among population at large in India may not be as high in support of Israel as it seems to be, because the government outlet makes most of the noise and they get the air. And then there is a regional breakup among them. I mean, you go to the southern states, northeastern states, and so on, and the picture is much more different, even when it comes to.
Well, thank you for that information, which is pretty much what I would have expected. I have not worked in India for many, many decades, and I was in Tamil Nadu in the south when I did. And it was very clear at the time that the four major regions of India had very, very different attitudes toward foreign affairs, with the south much more pro-Western, and the northeast, meaning Bengal, the opposite. And so, Delhi and Mumbai in their own different categories with different obsessions. So I'm not surprised when the BJP base, of course, is in the north and northeast, and so this doesn't surprise me. The government, as you indicate, and I don't think the Indian government is in any respect different from other governments at this time, and in its mounting of disinformation wars. I mean, it tries to control the narrative, and that is why you see things like the exaggeration by the Western press, of particularly the British, of casualties in Iran. That's why you see constant disinformation about the war in Ukraine. We now, in this age, see information warfare as crucial to the success of strategy. So there you have it. And I don't think that I'm pretty sure, as I said, that there is no way out of having the war. I think Donald Trump, to make one last point that refers to the cabinet meeting you mentioned, I think Donald Trump, first of all, what are his objectives? He wants to achieve a victory that makes him go down in history as the architect of, quote, peace, unquote, by which he means Israeli domination of West Asia. That is the pacification of everyone else. In other words, he wants glory. And that's anything that will give him glory will satisfy him. And he also wants to repeat the one-off in and out adventures that he's mounted in Venezuela and in June in Iran. A one-off attack, and then something good happens. Whatever that is, I can't imagine it actually. But the reality is that any war that starts with Iran under current circumstances is going to be a war of attrition. It's not going to be short. And the other reality is that the United States is far more likely to run out of Tomahawk missiles and air defense THAAD and other air defense systems before the Iranians run out of a missile attack capability. Because the Iranians know very well that time is on their side, not on that of militarily depleted United States. And the final point derived from that, if you're China and you see a military solution to the Taiwan issue as becoming more and more necessary, what could happen that would be better for you than the United States running out of all kinds of systems relevant to the defense of Taiwan? So there are people in China, I think the bulk of the Chinese, like the sensible majority of Indians, that want peace in West Asia, and see that as advantageous for many reasons. But there are people who say, well, let the United States exhaust itself in West Asia. That's good for us. So again, there are all kinds of knock-on effects which are possible. And you cannot predict, and here I go back to the tariff issue and Donald Trump, and his personality, his domination of policy, the absence of a policy process, his unpredictability, the erratic behavior that he's capable of. You cannot predict the outcome of a policy decision in Washington any more than you can predict the score on a pinball machine. You fire the little metal ball into the pinball machine, and you can shake the machine if you want, but you really can't control where that little ball hits and what scores it racks up. And we're in the same situation. We don't know either what policy decisions will be made. And once things begin to move, and with the United States not having any idea of what to do after an attack, what happens? Nobody knows.
My quick final question is to what extent does the developments in Syria in the recent months impact the balance of power, if you like, in West Asia? Given recently we've also heard about reports of agreement between the SDF Kurdish forces, the traditional ally, if you like, of the US in the Northeast. There has been long-standing issues in the region about decentralized power, divisions of oil fields, agricultural fields, etc., etc. And if Al-Shara's government, under the tutelage of US and Turkey, is consolidating power in the region, what is its impact on the larger war in the region that is looming?
Well, there's clearly a disagreement between the United States and Israel over the future of Syria. Israel would like to reduce it to a confederation, loosely aligned series of states, each with their own independence and ethno-religious identity. That is not working. In fact, the United States is withdrawing from Syria, finally. We have been there illegally, of course, and now we are leaving. And the Syrian Democratic Forces, so-called the Kurds, have indeed struck a deal with Damascus. Incidental to this, the collapse of the prison system for members of the so-called Islamic State has resulted in 20,000, 30,000 people of that persuasion being set free. Nobody knows where they are. There's a complication to this. Of course, we have the Russian interest in maintaining a naval base in Syria, which they're discussing with Shara and his government. We have a Chinese interest in getting rid of the Uyghurs, who are part of the 84th Division of the Syrian army, and one of whom occupies a command position in the defense establishment. Apparently, there are rumors that Syria and China have reached an agreement on the repatriation to Xinjiang for judicial punishment of perhaps 400 of the 3,500 or 4,000 Uyghurs who are in the Syrian army. China's bargaining pretty hard on this. Syria will need Chinese investment in order to reconstruct itself, and that's not going to come unless this issue is resolved. So we have two great powers, Russia and China, with different interests, bargaining with the authorities in Damascus. And meanwhile, the Israelis, of course, have seized territory in Syria and obviously have no intention of leaving. So it's a very complicated situation, made more so by the dominance of Turkey in relation to the government in Damascus and the Turkish interest in disarming the Kurds. So finally, we have the Kurds in Iraq, who are an autonomous body, once again intervening in Syria. So the Kurdish problem continues and finds a new manifestation. And the West is true to its record of betraying the Kurds at least 4 times each century. We're doing it again. Syria, yes. Meantime, Syria is a vacuum in terms of defense capabilities. And if the Gerald R. Ford sits off Lebanon, there's nothing to stop it flying over Lebanon and Syria, Iraq, in the direction of Iran.
We will leave it there, Ambassador Freeman. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, Jyotish, we really should find a better topic, a happier one than this one. And discussions of West Asia are pretty horrifying at the moment. But thank you for the opportunity to discuss these issues.
I agree, of course. Thank you. Thanks again, and have a wonderful rest of the day ahead.
Hi, my name is Ayushman. I, along with Jyotisman, have started this platform. In the last 2 years, we have tried to build content for the left and progressive forces. We have interviewed economists, historians, political commentators, and activists so far. If you have liked our content so far and want us to build an archive for the left, I have 2 requests for you. Please do consider donating for the cause. Link is in the description below. Also, if you are not able to do so, don't feel sad. You can always like our videos and share our videos to your comrades. Finally, don't forget to hit the subscribe button.